I sit in my car outside the house where I grew up, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turn white. Mom summoned me specifically for her 60th birthday dinner tonight, which feels strange considering how she usually treats me. The irony burns deep because she has no idea I now own a multi-million-dollar tech consulting firm. I kept my success private, especially from family who always saw me as the disappointment. Something significant will happen tonight. I take a deep breath and walk through the front door, immediately hit by the familiar scent of Mom's lavender candles and the sound of animated conversation from the dining room. The hardwood floors creak under my feet as I navigate toward the voices, each step bringing back memories of childhood dinners where I never quite measured up. The elegant dining room buzzes with extended family gathered around the mahogany table that Dad built before he passed away. Crystal glasses catch the light from the chandelier, and Mom's best china gleams under the warm glow. Everyone looks up when I enter, but the conversation doesn't pause. Instead, it shifts seamlessly back to praising my older sister Madison, who sits at Mom's right hand like a queen holding court. Madison just got promoted to assistant manager at First National Bank. Mom gushes to Aunt Carol, her voice carrying that special tone of pride she reserves exclusively for my sister. She's handling commercial loans, now working with real business owners, making a genuine difference in the community. Madison smiles modestly, tucking a strand of her perfectly styled blonde hair behind her ear. She wears a designer blazer that probably cost more than most people make in a week, and her manicured nails gleam as she gestures while speaking. It's really rewarding work. I'm helping families secure their futures, building something meaningful with my career. I slide into the empty chair at the far end of the table, the one that always seems to be waiting for me in the least prominent position. Uncle Robert nods approvingly at Madison's words, while Cousin Janet leans forward with genuine interest. That's what I call a real career. Mom continues, her eyes sparkling as she looks at Madison. Steady income benefits respect in the community. Banks are the backbone of American business. The conversation swirls around Madison's achievements for another 10 minutes before Mom finally acknowledges my presence with a question that feels more like an accusation. "And what exactly are you doing these days, Gianna, still playing with computers?" The dismissive tone in her voice makes my stomach clench. I've heard this exact phrasing countless times over the years, as if my work in technology is somehow childish or insignificant. I run a consulting firm that helps companies protect their digital assets. I reply carefully, keeping my voice steady. Madison laughs, a tinkling sound that carries an edge of condescension. "That sounds very modern and trendy. But is it actually profitable? I mean, can you support yourself doing that kind of work?" The question hangs in the air like smoke, and I feel every eye at the table focusing on me. Mom's expression shifts to one of concern, mixed with disappointment, as if Madison has voiced the exact worry she's been harboring about my choices. Technology consulting can be unpredictable. I answer, choosing my words with care. I learned long ago not to discuss the details of my success with family. They wouldn't believe it anyway, and Madison has a talent for twisting any good news into evidence of my inadequacy. "See, that's what worries me," Mom interjects, reaching across the table to pat Madison's hand affectionately. Madison has security. She knows exactly how much money she'll make each month. She gets health insurance, vacation time, retirement contributions. That's what responsible adults do. Aunt Carol nods sagely. "Stability is so important, especially for young women. You need to think about your future, Gianna. What happens when you get older and want to settle down? Men want partners who contribute consistently to the household." I bite my tongue to keep from laughing at the irony. My company generated over $3 million in revenue last year, but here I sit, being lectured about financial responsibility by people who think a bank assistant manager position represents the pinnacle of career achievement. Madison's smile grows wider as the conversation continues to focus on her accomplishments versus my apparent shortcomings. She describes her latest project involving a small business loan for a local restaurant owner, speaking with the authority of someone who considers herself a financial expert. I had to really analyze their cash flow projections, she explains importantly. Make sure they could handle the monthly payments without overextending themselves. It's a big responsibility knowing that families depend on my decisions. Mom beams with obvious pride. That's exactly the kind of work that builds character, real responsibility for real people's lives. As dinner preparations continue around us, I notice Madison checking her phone frequently and exchanging meaningful glances with Mom. There's an undercurrent of excitement in their behavior that feels orchestrated, as if they're sharing some delicious secret that will be revealed later. The conversation shifts to family gossip when Madison starts sharing updates about various relatives, but I catch something that makes my blood run cold. While talking to our cousin about holiday plans, Madison casually mentions that I've been going through a rough patch lately and might not be able to afford gifts this year. She's been having trouble finding steady work, Madison confides in a stage whisper that carries perfectly across the table. I think she's been borrowing money from different men to make ends meet. It's really sad, actually. The lie hits me like a physical slap. Madison delivers it with such convincing concern that even I almost believe her for a moment. She's not just undermining my reputation randomly, she's laying groundwork for something bigger. Aunt Carol's expression shifts from polite interest to genuine worry as she processes this information. Uncle Robert frowns and shakes his head, clearly disappointed, but not surprised. The seeds of doubt about my character and stability are being planted systematically around the table. I want to correct the record immediately, but I know from experience that defending myself against Madison's manipulations only makes me look more guilty. She has a talent for framing her lies in ways that make any contradiction seem like desperate damage control. Instead, I focus on the bigger picture emerging from tonight's gathering. Madison isn't just enjoying her usual role as the favored daughter, she's actively working to destroy my standing within the family. The question is why she's escalating now and what she hopes to accomplish. As the evening progresses, I begin to understand that this birthday dinner isn't a celebration at all. It's something much more calculated, and I'm apparently the guest of honor for all the wrong reasons. Dinner begins with Mom's famous pot roast, the recipe she learned from Grandma Rose and guards like a state secret. The meat falls apart at the touch of a fork surrounded by perfectly cooked carrots and potatoes that have absorbed all the rich flavors of the braising liquid. Under normal circumstances, this would be my favorite meal, but tonight every bite tastes like cardboard because I can feel the undercurrent of tension building around the table. Madison sits across from me, cutting her meat into precise, elegant pieces while maintaining animated conversation with everyone except me. She's wearing pearl earrings that catch the light when she turns her head, and her makeup is flawless despite the humid evening. Everything about her appearance screams success and sophistication. "Gianna, honey, are you feeling all right?" Aunt Carol asks with exaggerated concern. "You seem a bit withdrawn tonight. Madison mentioned you've been under some stress lately." I glance at Madison, who offers me a sympathetic smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine, Aunt Carol. Just enjoying listening to everyone's news." "Well, that's good to hear." Uncle Robert chimes in, his voice carrying the authoritative tone he uses when dispensing life advice. "Because at your age, you really need to start thinking seriously about your future. Time has a way of slipping by faster than you realize." Cousin Janet nods enthusiastically. "Robert's absolutely right. I remember when I was your age thinking I had all the time in the world to figure things out. Before I knew it, I was 35 with no real career plan and no savings account." The conversation feels choreographed, like everyone received talking points before I arrived. Each family member takes their turn expressing concern about my direction in life, always referencing something Madison told them earlier. The coordination is too perfect to be coincidental. Madison reaches across the table to squeeze my hand in a gesture that appears supportive, but feels like a claim of ownership. "Don't worry about Gianna. She's always been a dreamer, haven't you, sis?" Sometimes dreamers just need a little extra time to find their path. The condescension in her voice makes my jaw clench, but I force myself to smile and nod. Everyone's journey is different, I suppose. That's true. Mom interjects, setting down her wine glass with a gentle clink against the china. But there's a difference between following your dreams and refusing to face reality. At some point, we all have to grow up and make practical decisions. Uncle Robert leans forward, warming to the topic. The thing is, Gianna employers want to see consistency. They want to see that you can commit to something and stick with it. All this jumping around from project to project makes you look unreliable. I want to laugh at the absurdity of receiving career advice from a man who's worked the same factory job for 27 years without a single promotion, but I keep my expression neutral. I appreciate your concern, Uncle Robert. We're family, he replies earnestly. We look out for each other. That's what families do. As the meal progresses, I notice Madison and Mom exchanging glances that become more frequent and more meaningful. There's an excitement building between them, like children keeping a birthday surprise secret. Every few minutes, Madison checks the time on her phone or glances toward the front door as if she's expecting something specific to happen. The conversation takes another pointed turn when Cousin Janet brings up housing costs in the area. It's just impossible for young people to buy homes these days unless they have really solid careers. Even renting a decent apartment requires proof of steady income. That's exactly why Madison's position at the bank is so valuable, Mom says proudly. She's building the kind of credit history and income stability that opens doors. Banks love lending to their own employees. Madison smiles modestly. I'm actually looking at some really nice condominiums downtown. Nothing too extravagant, but something I can build equity in while I continue advancing my career. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Aunt Carol gushes. Property ownership is such an important step toward financial independence. There's nothing like the security of knowing you have a solid investment in your future. The implication hangs heavy in the air. Madison is moving forward with her life in all the right ways, while I remain stuck in some kind of extended adolescence. The comparison is being drawn with surgical precision, designed to highlight everything I'm supposedly doing wrong. Speaking of financial planning, Mom says, her voice taking on a more serious tone, I've been thinking a lot lately about legacy and what we leave behind for the people we love. A hush falls over the table as everyone senses the shift towards something more significant. Madison straightens in her chair, and I notice her hands tremble slightly as she reaches for her water glass. Whatever's coming next, she knows about it in advance. Family wealth isn't just about money. Mom continues, her eyes moving around the table to make contact with each person. It's about values, responsibility, and making sure the next generation understands what really matters in life. Uncle Robert nods sagely. Your father always said that money without character is worthless. He wanted to make sure his daughters understood the value of hard work and personal responsibility. Exactly. Mom agrees, her voice growing stronger and more confident. Which is why I've been making some important decisions about how to structure things going forward. Decisions that reflect the reality of who my daughters have become as adults. My stomach starts to knot as I realize where this conversation is heading. The entire evening has been building to this moment, and every seemingly casual comment about my failures and Madison's successes has been laying the groundwork for some kind of announcement. Madison's excitement becomes more obvious as she struggles to contain her anticipation. She keeps glancing between Mom and me, her eyes bright with something that looks like triumph, mixed with vindication. I think it's important for families to be honest with each other, Mom says, rising from her chair and moving to the sideboard where she keeps important documents, especially when it comes to matters that affect everyone's future. She retrieves a manila envelope from the drawer, holding it carefully as she returns to her place at the head of the table. The envelope looks official and serious, the kind that contains legal documents that change people's lives. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what your father would have wanted. Mom continues, her voice taking on the formal tone she uses for important occasions. About how to honor his memory while making sure our family's legacy goes to the daughter who will appreciate and protect it. The room falls completely silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner and the soft sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Everyone seems to understand that we've reached the moment the entire evening has been building toward. Madison can barely contain herself now, sitting on the edge of her chair, with her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her smile grows wider with each word Mom speaks, and I realize this moment represents some kind of ultimate victory for her. Mom opens the envelope and removes several sheets of legal papers, spreading them on the table in front of her, like a dealer preparing to reveal the winning hand. The papers look official and imposing, covered in the dense legal language that changes families forever. Tomorrow I'm meeting with my attorney to finalize some changes. Mom announces, her voice carrying the weight of absolute decision. Changes that reflect the reality of who my daughters have become and what they've accomplished with their lives. The anticipation in the room becomes almost unbearable as everyone waits for the details of whatever Mom has decided. Madison's triumph is so obvious now that it's almost embarrassing to watch, but I find myself oddly calm as I wait to hear exactly how this evening is designed to humiliate me. What none of them realize is that their carefully orchestrated moment of truth is about to collide with truths of my own that will change everything they think they know about this family. Before Mom can continue with her announcement, her phone rings from the kitchen with the sharp, insistent tone she uses for important calls. She frowns at the interruption, clearly annoyed that her dramatic moment has been derailed. "I should take this," she says reluctantly, glancing at the caller ID. "It's Harold from the accounting office. He was supposed to call earlier about the quarterly reports." Mom hurries toward the kitchen, leaving the rest of us sitting around the table in uncomfortable silence. Madison looks frustrated that her moment of triumph has been postponed, while the other relatives make small talk about the weather and upcoming holiday plans. I excuse myself to use the bathroom upstairs, grateful for a chance to escape the suffocating atmosphere of orchestrated family drama. As I climb the familiar staircase, running my hand along the polished banister that Dad refinished himself, I can hear Mom's voice drifting from the kitchen below. "What do you mean the deposits were short again?" Mom's tone carries a sharpness I rarely hear from her. Madison assured me she handled all the restaurant receipts personally this week. I pause on the landing, my hand frozen on the banister as I process what I'm hearing. Mom owns 3 small restaurants in different parts of town, family businesses that have been providing steady income for over a decade. Madison has been helping with the bookkeeping and bank deposits as part of her supposed contribution to the family enterprises. "How much are we talking about?" Mom's voice grows more strained. "That can't be right, Harold. Check those numbers again." Curiosity overrides my original plan, and I move closer to the top of the stairs where I can hear more clearly. The conversation becomes more intense as Mom struggles to understand what her accountant is telling her. The Riverside location shows deposits $23,000 lower than the register reports for this month alone. Mom continues, her voice rising with obvious distress. "And you're saying the pattern goes back how many weeks?" My blood runs cold as I realize what I'm hearing. Someone has been systematically stealing from the family restaurants, and all evidence points to Madison, who's been positioning herself as the responsible daughter, while actually bleeding the businesses dry. Madison said the downtown location was struggling because of construction on Main Street. Mom argues, clearly trying to reconcile what she's hearing with what Madison has been telling her. She showed me the daily reports herself, explained how the road work was affecting foot traffic. I creep down 2 steps, straining to catch every word as the full scope of the problem becomes clear. Harold must be going through the numbers systematically because Mom's responses reveal a pattern of missing funds across multiple locations and several months. $47,000 total. Mom's voice cracks with disbelief. That money was supposed to cover the loan payments and supplier invoices. Where could it have gone? The pieces start falling into place with devastating clarity. Madison's designer clothes, her expensive jewelry, her plans to buy a downtown condominium, all funded by money stolen from businesses Mom built from nothing after Dad's death. Madison has been living a lifestyle far beyond her bank salary while systematically destroying the family's financial foundation. I don't understand how this could happen without someone noticing. Mom continues, her voice now shaking with the combination of confusion and fear. Madison handles all the deposit slips personally. She even offered to take on more responsibility to help during this difficult economic period. The irony is staggering. Madison convinced Mom to give her increased access to business funds by positioning herself as the helpful, responsible daughter, stepping up during challenging times. Then she used that access to fund her own luxury lifestyle while blaming missing revenues on external factors like construction projects and economic downturns. "You're absolutely certain about these numbers?" Mom asks, her voice barely audible now. "Because if this is accurate, we're looking at potential bankruptcy. The restaurants are leveraged to their maximum credit limits." I feel physically sick as the full implications hit me. Mom has been struggling to keep the family businesses afloat during what she thought was a temporary rough patch, never realizing that her trusted daughter was actually accelerating their destruction. The restaurants that represent Dad's legacy and Mom's life work are being systematically destroyed from within. "I'll need all the documentation first thing tomorrow morning," Mom says weakly. "Bank statements, deposit slips, register reports, everything. And Harold, don't discuss this with anyone else until we understand exactly what happened." The call ends and I hear Mom sink into one of the kitchen chairs with a heavy sigh that carries the weight of someone whose world just shifted beneath their feet. She sits in silence for several minutes, presumably trying to process the magnitude of what she's learned. I remain frozen on the staircase, my mind racing as I consider the full scope of Madison's betrayal. This isn't just about stealing money. It's about destroying the family's entire financial foundation while manipulating Mom into believing the problems are caused by external factors beyond anyone's control. When Mom finally returns to the dining room, her face has lost its earlier confidence and excitement. She looks pale and shaken, like someone who just received devastating medical news. The legal papers that seemed so important 15 minutes ago now sit forgotten on the table. "Everything all right, Patricia?" Uncle Robert asks with genuine concern. "You look a bit upset." "Just some business matters that need attention," Mom replies, forcing a weak smile. "Nothing that can't be handled tomorrow." Madison immediately leans forward with exaggerated concern. "Mom, if there's anything wrong with the restaurants, you know I'm here to help. I understand business finances better than most people." The audacity of Madison offering help with problems she created makes my stomach turn. She sits there looking innocent and supportive, while Mom struggles with the reality of potential bankruptcy, never knowing that her trusted daughter is the architect of their financial destruction. "It's probably just some confusion with the accounting," Madison continues smoothly. "These things happen when you're dealing with multiple locations and different staff members. I'm sure we can sort everything out once we sit down and go through the numbers systematically." Mom nods absently, clearly desperate to believe that simple explanations exist for what Harold discovered. Madison's confident reassurance provides exactly the kind of hope Mom needs right now, even though it's based on complete deception. I realize I'm witnessing something truly sinister. Madison isn't just stealing money, she's positioning herself to be Mom's savior during the crisis she created. When the full extent of the financial damage becomes clear, Madison will undoubtedly have solutions ready that further increase her control over what remains of the family assets. As I finally continue upstairs to the bathroom, I understand that tonight's inheritance announcement is happening at the exact moment when the inheritance itself is being systematically destroyed. Mom plans to reward Madison's supposed responsibility and financial acumen, never knowing that Madison has been using those very qualities to bankrupt the family. The evening has taken on a surreal quality where reality and perception exist in completely different universes. In Mom's reality, she's about to honor the daughter, who represents everything she values most. In actual reality, she's about to reward the daughter who has betrayed everything she's worked to build. And Madison sits downstairs at this very moment, basking in family admiration, while the evidence of her crimes creates crisis phone calls from accountants who have finally discovered the truth. When I return to the dining room, I find that Madison's boyfriend Trevor has arrived carrying a bottle of expensive wine and wearing a smile that seems too polished for a casual family dinner. He's tall and lean with perfectly styled dark hair and a suit that probably costs more than most people's monthly rent. Everything about his appearance screams success and sophistication. Trevor. Madison jumps up from her chair with obvious excitement, rushing to greet him with a kiss that lasts just long enough to make everyone else at the table slightly uncomfortable. "Everyone, this is the amazing man I've been telling you about." Trevor sets down the wine and turns to face the assembled family with the confident smile of someone accustomed to making excellent first impressions. His handshake is firm when he greets Uncle Robert, and he makes eye contact with each person as Madison handles the introductions. "Mrs. Patterson, it's such an honor to meet you," Trevor says to Mom with exactly the right combination of respect and warmth. Madison talks about her family constantly, and I've been looking forward to this evening for weeks. Mom practically glows under his attention, clearly charmed by his polite manners and obvious devotion to her daughter. "Please call me Patricia. Any friend of Madison's is family here." "I brought a Caymus Cabernet." Trevor continues presenting the wine bottle with a flourish. "Madison mentioned it's your favorite varietal, and I thought tonight seemed like the perfect occasion for something special." The wine choice is impressive. Caymus runs about $80 a bottle and represents exactly the kind of thoughtful gesture that wealthy, sophisticated men make when they want to demonstrate their appreciation for family traditions. Mom accepts the bottle with obvious pleasure, clearly impressed by Trevor's attention to detail. "How thoughtful," Aunt Carol gushes. "Madison, you really found yourself a keeper." Trevor slides into the empty chair next to Madison with practiced ease, immediately engaging Uncle Robert in conversation about market trends, while simultaneously complimenting Cousin Janet's earrings. He has the rare social skill of making everyone feel like the most important person in the room while maintaining focus on his primary objective. "Trevor works in investment management," Madison explains proudly. "He helps wealthy families optimize their portfolios and plan for long-term financial growth." "That sounds fascinating," Mom responds with genuine interest. "We've been thinking about diversifying some of our investments, especially with the restaurants generating steady cash flow." I noticed Trevor's eyes sharpen with interest at Mom's mention of family assets, though his expression remains pleasantly neutral. This is clearly the kind of information he was hoping to gather tonight. "Portfolio diversification is absolutely crucial in today's market environment," Trevor responds smoothly. "Too many families keep their wealth tied up in single industries or local businesses when they could be building much more substantial returns through strategic investment planning." The conversation continues as Trevor subtly steers the discussion toward family finances, asking seemingly innocent questions about property holdings, business valuations, and investment timelines. His inquiries feel natural and helpful rather than intrusive, demonstrating sophisticated social manipulation skills. "Madison mentioned that you own multiple restaurant locations." Trevor continues addressing Mom directly. "That's impressive entrepreneurial success, especially in today's challenging business climate. Have you considered leveraging that equity for broader investment opportunities?" Mom looks flattered by his description of her business success, clearly enjoying being seen as a sophisticated entrepreneur rather than a small-town restaurant owner. "We've always focused on growing the businesses organically, but you make an interesting point about leveraging equity. The key is understanding your risk tolerance and investment timeline." Trevor explains, pulling out his phone to show charts and graphs that illustrate various investment strategies. "With proper planning, existing business equity can generate returns that far exceed traditional business growth." I watch this performance with growing unease as Trevor systematically gathers information about every aspect of our family's financial situation. He learns about property values, business revenues, insurance policies, and investment accounts through casual conversation that feels helpful rather than predatory. "Madison's been such a tremendous asset to my practice." Trevor continues reaching over to squeeze her hand affectionately. "She has incredible instincts about financial planning and risk assessment. I've actually been encouraging her to consider pursuing her investment advisor certification. Madison beams under his praise, clearly thrilled to be recognized as financially sophisticated by someone she perceives as an expert. Trevor's been teaching me so much about market analysis and portfolio management. It's fascinating how much more complex financial planning becomes once you start dealing with substantial assets. Uncle Robert nods approvingly. Sounds like you two make quite a team. It's wonderful when couples share professional interests. We do work very well together. Trevor agrees, his smile growing wider. In fact, Madison's been helping me analyze some local investment opportunities. Her insights into the community business landscape have been invaluable. The conversation takes an even more troubling turn when Trevor begins discussing specific strategies for consolidating family assets and streamlining financial management. His recommendations all involve centralizing control of investments and property holdings in ways that would give Madison significantly more influence over family wealth. The challenge with multiple business entities is maintaining oversight and ensuring optimal performance. Trevor explains with professional authority. Many successful families find that consolidating decision-making through a single trusted family member creates better outcomes across all their holdings. Mom listens with obvious fascination, clearly impressed by Trevor's sophisticated approach to financial management. She's being sold on the idea that Madison should have increased control over family assets without realizing she's talking to someone who specializes in gaining access to other people's wealth. That makes perfect sense, Mom responds thoughtfully. We've always handled things informally, but perhaps it's time for a more professional approach to family financial planning. Trevor's eyes practically light up with excitement, though he maintains his composed professional demeanor. Madison has all the right qualities for that kind of responsibility. She understands both the business fundamentals and the family dynamics necessary for effective wealth management. As the conversation continues, I realize I'm watching a masterclass in financial manipulation. Trevor is using his relationship with Madison to gain detailed information about our family's assets, while positioning Madison as the ideal person to manage those assets. Once Madison has control, Trevor will undoubtedly have influence over her decisions through their romantic relationship. The most chilling aspect is how genuine their affection appears. Madison clearly believes she's found her perfect match, a successful, sophisticated man who appreciates her financial acumen and supports her career ambitions. She has no idea she's being used as a gateway to her family's wealth by someone who specializes in this exact type of romantic fraud. I'd love to put together a comprehensive financial analysis for your family, Trevor offers magnanimously. No charge, of course. Just an opportunity to help Madison's family optimize their wealth-building strategies. Mom's face lights up with gratitude. That's incredibly generous, Trevor. We would really appreciate professional guidance from someone with your expertise. I want to scream warnings about predators who offer free financial advice to gain access to family assets, but I know such objections would be dismissed as jealousy or paranoia. Trevor has positioned himself perfectly as the helpful boyfriend who wants to contribute to Madison's family's success. What makes the situation even more sinister is the timing. Trevor's arrival coincides perfectly with the financial crisis Mom just learned about from her accountant. As the restaurant businesses face potential bankruptcy, Trevor will undoubtedly have solutions ready that involve transferring assets into investment vehicles he controls. Madison and Trevor make the perfect criminal team. She steals money from family businesses, while he provides sophisticated strategies for gaining control of whatever assets remain. Together, they're systematically positioning themselves to take over the family's entire financial foundation under the guise of professional financial management and romantic partnership. And Mom sits here tonight planning to reward this betrayal by officially making Madison her primary heir, never suspecting that her trusted daughter and her charming boyfriend are already in the process of stealing everything she's worked to build. While Trevor continues charming the family with his financial expertise, Mom excuses herself from the table again, this time gesturing for me to follow her into the living room. The space feels smaller than I remember from childhood, with the same floral wallpaper and heavy oak furniture that Dad picked out decades ago. Family photos line the mantelpiece, but I notice most of them feature Madison prominently, while I appear in the background, or not at all. "Sit down, Gianna," Mom says, her voice carrying an edge I haven't heard since my teenage years. "We need to have a conversation that's long overdue." I settle into the familiar burgundy armchair where I used to curl up reading books, while Madison played with friends outside. The leather has worn smooth over the years, molded by countless family conversations and quiet evenings when Dad was still alive, to mediate between Mom's expectations and my failures to meet them. Mom takes the matching chair across from me, smoothing her dress carefully before folding her hands in her lap. Her posture is formal and deliberate, like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict that's been years in the making. "I've been thinking a lot lately about why things turned out so differently between you and your sister." Mom begins, her voice measured and controlled. "Madison has always been focused, responsible, someone I could count on to make good decisions. But you—" She trails off, shaking her head with the frustrated expression I remember from countless childhood disappointments. Report cards that weren't good enough, friendships she didn't approve of, choices that somehow never measured up to whatever standard Madison had set. "I know you think I've been unfair to you over the years." Mom continues, her tone becoming more defensive. "You probably believe I favor Madison for no good reason, that I'm just playing favorites without any basis for my preferences." The accusation in her voice stings because it's partially true. I have wondered why Madison always seemed to receive automatic approval, while every one of my accomplishments required extensive proof and explanation. Even when I excelled academically or won awards for programming competitions, Mom's praise felt grudging and temporary. But the truth is, Gianna, there are things you've done that fundamentally changed how I see you. Mom says, her voice growing stronger and more confident. "Things that showed me your true character when you thought no one was paying attention." My stomach begins to knot as I realize this conversation is heading somewhere specific and painful. Mom isn't just expressing general disappointment, she's building toward revealing some defining moment that shaped her entire perception of who I am as a person. "Do you remember your senior year of high school when I started finding money missing from my purse?" Mom asks, her eyes fixed on my face as she searches for signs of guilt or recognition. Small amounts at first, then larger sums as the year went on. I remember the accusations vaguely, but more clearly I recall the confusion and hurt of being suspected of theft without any real evidence. Mom would find her wallet short $20 or $30 and immediately assume I had taken the money, despite my consistent denials and obvious bewilderment. I kept hoping I was wrong about what was happening. Mom continues, her voice taking on the pained tone of someone recounting a deep betrayal. "I wanted to believe my own daughter wouldn't steal from her family, especially when we were struggling financially after your father's medical bills." The mention of Dad's illness brings back memories of that terrible year when cancer treatments drained our savings and filled our house with the constant stress of medical appointments and insurance battles. Money was tight, tensions ran high, and every family interaction carried the weight of unspoken fears about Dad's prognosis and our financial survival. Then Madison came to me one evening in tears, absolutely devastated because she'd discovered the truth. Mom says, her voice breaking slightly with remembered emotion. "She'd seen you taking money from my purse to buy drugs from some boy at school." The words hit me like a physical blow, completely rewriting my understanding of my relationship with both Mom and Madison. I stare at Mom in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what she's revealing. Madison didn't just lie about me stealing money, she created an entire narrative involving drug purchases that painted me as someone capable of destroying my family during their most vulnerable moment. Madison was heartbroken. Mom continues, tears forming in her eyes as she relives what she believes was a defining family tragedy. She begged me not to confront you directly because she was afraid you'd become violent or run away from home. She made me promise to handle the situation quietly and get you help instead of involving the police. I feel physically sick as the implications become clear. Madison's lie didn't just explain missing money, it convinced Mom that I was a drug addict willing to steal from my dying father's medical fund. Every interaction between Mom and me for the past 15 years has been filtered through this belief that I'm fundamentally damaged and potentially dangerous. I spent months walking on eggshells around you. Mom explains, her voice growing more strained. Hiding my purse, avoiding leaving you alone in the house, watching for signs that you were high or planning to steal something valuable. Madison helped me research treatment programs and intervention strategies. The cruelty of Madison's manipulation becomes staggering as I realize she positioned herself as Mom's ally and support system during what Mom believed was a family crisis. While I struggled to understand why Mom had become cold and suspicious, Madison was actively reinforcing the lie that made me seem like a threat to the family's stability. When you graduated and moved out for college, I thought maybe the problem would resolve itself. Mom continues. New environment different influences a chance to mature and move past whatever had driven you to make such destructive choices. I finally find my voice, though it comes out weaker than I intended. Mom, I never took money from your purse. I never bought drugs from anyone at school. Madison lied to you. Mom's expression hardens immediately, her eyes flashing with the defensive anger of someone whose fundamental beliefs are being challenged. Don't you dare blame your sister for your mistakes, Gianna. Madison was trying to protect you by keeping your problems within the family instead of involving authorities. What money actually went missing? I ask desperately, trying to find some logical thread that might unravel Madison's deception. Did you ever find any evidence of drug use? Did any teachers or counselors express concerns about my behavior? The evidence was the missing money, Mom replies firmly, and Madison saw you taking it with her own eyes. Are you seriously going to sit here and call your sister a liar about something so serious? The conversation reveals the perfect elegance of Madison's manipulation. By claiming to be an eyewitness to my supposed theft, she made her story impossible to contradict without calling her a deliberate liar. By framing her revelation as reluctant concern for my welfare, she positioned herself as the loving sister, trying to save me from self-destruction. Madison has never lied to me about anything important. Mom continues with absolute conviction. She's always been honest and straightforward, even when the truth was painful to hear. Why would she make up something so terrible about her own sister? I realize there's no way to convince Mom that Madison's entire narrative was fabricated. The lie has been embedded in Mom's understanding of our family dynamic for so long that it's become historical fact. Any evidence I could present would be dismissed as desperate attempts to shift blame away from my own failures. This is exactly why I worry about your judgment, Gianna, Mom says with obvious disappointment. Even now, 15 years later, you're still trying to avoid responsibility for the choices you made as a teenager. How can I trust you to make good decisions as an adult when you won't even acknowledge the mistakes of your past? The crushing weight of understanding settles over me as I realize how completely Madison has poisoned my relationship with Mom. Every achievement I've accomplished as an adult has been viewed through the lens of someone Mom believes is fundamentally untrustworthy and potentially self-destructive. I've spent years hoping you would grow out of whatever drove you to steal from your family. Mom continues, her voice taking on the tone of someone delivering a final judgment. I've watched you bounce from job to job, never settling into anything stable or reliable, and I keep wondering if you're still struggling with the same problems that led to the drug use. Madison's teenage lie has metastasized into a comprehensive explanation for every aspect of my life that doesn't meet Mom's expectations. My career in technology consulting appears unreliable because Mom believes I'm still the drug-addicted teenager who stole from her dying father's medical fund. That's why Madison's success means so much to me. Mom explains, her voice softening with obvious pride. She represents everything I hoped both my daughters would become: honest, responsible, someone who builds rather than destroys. As Mom continues explaining how Madison's fictional heroism during my supposed addiction shaped her parenting philosophy for the past decade and a half, I realize I'm not just fighting against current perceptions, but against a carefully constructed mythology that has defined our family relationships for years. Madison didn't just lie about me once as a teenager. She created a foundational narrative that has influenced every family decision since then. Tonight's inheritance announcement isn't just about rewarding Madison's recent accomplishments, but about officially acknowledging the sister who supposedly saved the family from my destructive behavior. The conversation ends with Mom returning to the dining room, leaving me alone with the devastating realization that my entire adult relationship with my family has been built on lies Madison told when we were still in high school. I sit in Dad's old chair surrounded by family photos that suddenly make perfect sense in their obvious preference for Madison, and try to process the magnitude of betrayal I'm finally beginning to understand. I need a few minutes to compose myself after Mom's revelation, so I head upstairs again under the pretense of checking my makeup. The second floor of the house feels like a museum of my childhood, with the same pale yellow paint on the walls and family photographs documenting birthdays, holidays, and school events from decades past. Madison's old bedroom door stands open, revealing the pristine space Mom maintains like a shrine to her perfect daughter. The queen-sized bed is made with military precision, crowned with decorative pillows that match the curtains Madison picked out during her senior year of high school. Her academic awards still hang on the wall next to photos of her with various boyfriends and friend groups, all looking like advertisements for successful teenage social lives. My own bedroom door is closed, and when I push it open, I discover Mom has converted the space into a home office. My childhood furniture has been replaced with a desk filing cabinets and bookshelves filled with business manuals and financial planning guides. The transformation feels symbolic, Madison's room preserved as a monument, while mine has been repurposed for practical adult concerns. I walk down the hallway toward the bathroom, passing the family photos that line the walls like a chronological record of our childhood years. In every image, Madison appears confident and radiant, while I lurk in the background or appear caught off guard by the camera. Seeing them now with fresh understanding of Madison's manipulation, I notice details that previously escaped my attention. The bathroom door is slightly ajar, and as I approach, I notice light coming from Mom's bedroom across the hall. The door stands open, revealing her personal workspace, where she handles family business matters and financial planning. Curiosity draws me toward the doorway where I can see her mahogany desk covered with papers and documents. I know I shouldn't invade Mom's privacy, but the phone call with Harold earlier tonight raised too many questions about the family's financial situation. If Madison has been stealing from the restaurants while positioning herself to inherit whatever remains, I need to understand the full scope of what's happening. Stepping carefully into Mom's bedroom, I approach the desk where legal documents are spread across the polished surface. The papers appear to be related to estate planning, with letterheads from Mom's attorney and several financial institutions. My heart pounds as I realize these must be the documents she was referring to during dinner. The first document I examine is a revised last will and testament dated just 3 weeks ago. The legal language is dense and formal, but the basic structure becomes clear as I scan through the provisions. Mom has indeed restructured everything to favor Madison, but the details are more comprehensive than I expected. Madison inherits the house, all 3 restaurant locations, Mom's investment accounts, and her personal property. I receive a token bequest of $5,000 and some jewelry that belonged to Grandma Rose. The disparity is stunning in its completeness. Madison gets everything meaningful while I receive what amounts to symbolic acknowledgement of my existence. But as I continue reading, I discover provisions that Madison probably doesn't know about. The restaurants aren't just assets, they come with substantial debts that have been accumulating over the past 2 years. According to the financial statements attached to the will, the businesses owe nearly $200,000 to suppliers, almost $300,000 in outstanding loan balances, and significant amounts in unpaid taxes and fees. The house that appears to be such a generous inheritance is actually mortgaged far beyond its current market value. Mom took out 3 separate home equity loans over the past 5 years, apparently, to cover operating expenses for the struggling restaurants. Madison will inherit property worth about $400,000 that carries debt obligations totaling almost $600,000. Even Mom's investment accounts show disturbing patterns of recent withdrawals and early redemptions. Retirement funds that should contain hundreds of thousands of dollars have been systematically depleted to cover business expenses and mortgage payments. Madison's inheritance includes accounts worth less than $50,000 total. The financial picture emerging from these documents is catastrophic. Mom has been fighting to save the family businesses by leveraging everything else she owns, creating a house of cards that's about to collapse under its own weight. Madison's inheritance isn't a generous gift, it's a financial disaster that will bankrupt her within months. What makes this discovery even more chilling is the realization that Madison probably knows about the debts from her involvement in the restaurant bookkeeping. She's been systematically stealing money from businesses that were already failing, accelerating their collapse, while ensuring she would inherit the worthless remnants. I photographed several key pages with my phone documenting the debt levels and financial obligations that Madison will assume, along with her inheritance. The evidence reveals a financial strategy that's either incredibly naive or deliberately malicious. Mom is passing along crushing debt loads disguised as generous bequests. A separate document catches my attention titled Business Asset Analysis and dated from last month. This appears to be a professional evaluation of the restaurant properties and their earning potential. The analysis is brutally honest about the business's prospects, projecting continued losses and recommending immediate liquidation to minimize further financial damage. According to this report, the restaurants have been losing money consistently for over 3 years. Rising food costs, increased labor expenses, and changing consumer preferences have created an impossible operating environment. The consultant recommends selling all 3 locations immediately and using the proceeds to pay down debt obligations before they grow even larger. Mom apparently commissioned this analysis to understand her options for the family businesses, but she chose to ignore the recommendations and continue pouring money into failing enterprises. The emotional attachment to businesses that represent Dad's legacy has blinded her to the financial reality that they're destroying her retirement security. I discover additional documents related to Madison's recent involvement in the restaurant management. Financial records show her signature on numerous supplier contracts, loan modifications, and expense authorizations. Madison hasn't just been stealing money, she's been actively signing agreements that increase the business's debt obligations. The pattern suggests Madison has been accelerating the restaurant's financial collapse while positioning herself to inherit them. Once she gains control through the inheritance, she can liquidate the assets, satisfy minimal debt obligations, and walk away with whatever value remains. Her theft of operating funds creates cash flow crises that justify the eventual sale of properties she'll inherit. The most damning document is a handwritten note in Mom's careful script, apparently outlining her reasoning for the inheritance decisions. The note explains that Madison has demonstrated financial responsibility through her bank career and assistance with family business management, while I have shown no interest in family enterprises or business continuity. Mom's reasoning is based entirely on Madison's manipulation and deception. Madison convinced Mom that her theft was actually financial expertise, while positioning my absence from the failing businesses as evidence of irresponsibility rather than smart career choices. As I photograph the final documents, I hear footsteps in the hallway below, followed by Mom's voice calling my name. I quickly arrange the papers exactly as I found them and slip out of her bedroom, closing the door silently behind me. Coming, Mom. I call back, making my way toward the staircase with my phone full of evidence that will completely change tonight's carefully orchestrated family gathering. The inheritance Madison is so excited to receive will actually destroy her financially, but only if she's genuinely ignorant about the family's true financial situation. If she knows about the debts and has been planning to liquidate the assets for personal gain, then she's orchestrated an even more sophisticated theft than I initially realized. Either way, the will documents reveal that tonight's announcement isn't just about family favoritism, it's about transferring a financial disaster from Mom to Madison while ensuring I remain completely excluded from both the assets and the obligations. What Mom doesn't realize is that her carefully planned inheritance strategy will either bankrupt her favorite daughter or reward her for systematically destroying the family's financial foundation. And I now have photographic evidence of exactly how this family's finances have been manipulated and destroyed by the daughter Mom considers most trustworthy and responsible. I'm still processing the shocking financial documents when my phone buzzes with a text message from an unknown number. The timing feels strange since I rarely receive calls or messages during family gatherings, and the number doesn't match any of my business contacts or personal connections. Check your email. Important information about your family situation. A friend. My hands shake slightly as I open my email app, finding a message from a Gmail address I don't recognize. The subject line reads, "Evidence you need to see tonight," and the timestamp shows it was sent just 20 minutes ago while I was discovering the will documents upstairs. The email contains no explanatory text, just a series of attached photographs that begin loading slowly on my phone screen. As the images become clear, I realize someone has been conducting a professional investigation into Madison and Trevor's activities. The first photograph shows Madison leaving First National Bank through a rear exit carrying a bank deposit bag that should have been processed through official channels. The timestamp indicates this was taken during normal business hours last Tuesday, and the image quality suggests professional surveillance equipment rather than casual observation. Subsequent photos document Madison's daily routine with precision that suggests weeks or months of systematic monitoring. I see images of her meeting Trevor at expensive restaurants during lunch hours, shopping for designer clothing at boutiques that charge more for single items than most people earn in a week, and visiting real estate offices in the affluent downtown district. One particularly damning photograph shows Madison and Trevor examining bank statements together at a coffee shop with Trevor, pointing to specific line items while Madison takes notes. The image captures them in the middle of what appears to be strategic financial planning, their body language suggesting intimate collaboration rather than casual romantic conversation. The next series of images focuses on Trevor's activities independent of Madison. I see photographs of him meeting with other young women at various locations around town, always well-dressed and appearing to be in serious conversation. One woman appears to be crying while Trevor offers comfort, his hand resting on her shoulder, in a gesture that suggests practiced emotional manipulation. Additional photos show Trevor visiting multiple banks' real estate offices and investment firms throughout the past month. His schedule suggests someone systematically gathering information and building relationships across the financial community. These aren't casual meetings, they represent a coordinated campaign to establish trust and access within local financial institutions. The most shocking images focus on Madison's activities at the family restaurants. High-resolution photographs capture her removing cash from registered drawers, manipulating inventory records, and conducting transactions that appear designed to create artificial shortfalls. The documentation is so thorough that it could serve as evidence in criminal proceedings. One photograph shows Madison meeting with a man I don't recognize in the parking lot behind the Riverside restaurant location. She's handing him an envelope while he passes her a small package in return. The exchange happens quickly and discreetly, but the camera captures both their faces clearly, along with the license plate of the man's luxury sedan. My phone buzzes with another text message from the same unknown number. More evidence available if needed. Meet tomorrow at Riverside Coffee noon. Come alone. The mysterious contact seems to understand that tonight's family gathering represents some kind of culmination of Madison and Trevor's schemes. They've been monitoring the situation long enough to recognize that immediate action is necessary to prevent further damage. I scroll through additional email attachments, finding bank records that appear to have been obtained through professional investigation rather than casual observation. The documents show patterns of unusual transactions between Madison's personal accounts and various business entities, including several that match the missing restaurant deposits Mom learned about tonight. One particularly detailed spreadsheet tracks money flowing from restaurant deposits into Madison's personal checking account, then out to luxury purchases, investment accounts, and cash payments to Trevor. The analysis reveals systematic theft totaling over $60,000 in just the past 6 months. Additional documents focus on Trevor's background, revealing a pattern of romantic relationships with women from wealthy families, followed by financial manipulation and eventual disappearance. Police reports from 3 different states describe similar schemes, where Trevor gained access to family assets through romantic relationships, then liquidated investments and transferred funds before abandoning his victims. The investigation materials include copies of restraining orders, fraud complaints, and civil judgments against Trevor under various names and aliases. His current identity appears to be fabricated, designed to conceal a criminal history spanning almost a decade across multiple states. One particularly devastating document shows that Trevor is currently married to a woman in California who believes he's working overseas for an international investment firm. His relationship with Madison represents bigamy, in addition to fraud suggesting someone willing to commit multiple serious felonies to access family wealth. The email concludes with a final attachment that takes my breath away, a recording file labeled Madison and Trevor Planning Session recorded yesterday evening. The audio quality is clear enough to identify both voices discussing specific strategies for gaining control of family assets following tonight's inheritance announcement. I put in my earbuds and listened to excerpts of the recording hearing Madison and Trevor discussing the timing of Mom's will announcement and their plans for liquidating inherited assets. Madison's voice carries excitement as she describes finally gaining control of properties she's been systematically undermining for months. Once the inheritance is official, we can start the liquidation process immediately. Madison's voice explains with obvious satisfaction. The businesses are already operating at a loss, so selling them will seem like smart financial management rather than opportunistic asset stripping. Trevor's response reveals the full scope of their criminal partnership. The key is maintaining appearances until all the transfers are complete. Once we control the assets, we can restructure everything through offshore entities before anyone realizes what's happening. The recording confirms my worst fears about Madison's motivations and Trevor's criminal intentions. They're not just stealing money, they're planning to systematically dismantle everything Mom has worked to build while using the inheritance as legal cover for their theft. My phone buzzes again with another message. Police contacts ready if needed. This ends tonight if you're ready to act. The anonymous investigator has apparently been building a criminal case against Madison and Trevor while waiting for the right moment to intervene. Tonight's inheritance announcement provides the perfect opportunity to expose their schemes before they can cause even more damage. I realize someone has been protecting my family's interests while I remained completely unaware of the extent of Madison and Trevor's betrayal. The investigator seems to understand that I'm the only family member positioned to recognize the truth and take appropriate action. The question now is whether I'm prepared to use this evidence to completely destroy Madison's life and expose the criminal conspiracy she's built with Trevor. The information in my hands could send both of them to prison while potentially saving what remains of the family's financial foundation. As I finish reviewing the evidence, I understand that tonight's family gathering isn't just about inheritance announcements. It's about choosing between protecting Madison's reputation and protecting the family from further destruction. The anonymous investigator has given me the power to end Madison and Trevor's criminal partnership but using that power will shatter Mom's perceptions about her favorite daughter and potentially destroy relationships that have defined our family for decades. I'm still reeling from the anonymous evidence when Madison appears at the bottom of the staircase, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she approaches. Her expression carries a mixture of excitement and nervous energy, like someone who can barely contain anticipation for a long-awaited victory. "Gianna, can we talk privately for a minute?" Madison asks, her voice carrying the artificially sweet tone she uses when she wants something specific. I think there are some things we should discuss before Mom makes her announcement. I follow her into the kitchen where the scent of Mom's pot roast still lingers despite the completed meal. Madison leans against the granite countertop, crossing her arms in a posture that suggests she's prepared for confrontation. Her confidence seems absolute, as if she believes she holds all the advantages in whatever conversation is about to unfold. "Look, I know tonight might be difficult for you." Madison begins, her tone dripping with false sympathy. Mom's been thinking a lot about legacy and responsibility, and sometimes those conversations lead to decisions that might seem unfair from the outside. The condescension in her voice makes my skin crawl. She's positioning herself as the mature sister, offering comfort to someone who's about to face disappointment, completely unaware that I now possess evidence of her criminal activities. "I appreciate your concern," I reply, carefully studying her expression for any signs that she suspects I know about her schemes with Trevor. "Family decisions can definitely be complicated." Madison's smile widens, and she moves closer with the predatory confidence of someone who believes victory is assured. "The thing is, Gianna, responsibility matters in families like ours. When there are real assets involved, real businesses and property that affect people's livelihoods, you need someone reliable making the important decisions." She gestures toward the dining room where Trevor's voice can be heard offering investment advice to Uncle Robert. "Trevor's been helping me understand how complex family financial management becomes when you're dealing with substantial holdings. It's not just about fairness, it's about competency and proven judgment." The irony of Madison lecturing me about financial competency while actively stealing from family businesses is almost overwhelming. She stands here, explaining why she deserves to inherit assets she's been systematically destroying, completely convinced of her own righteousness. Trevor seems very knowledgeable about financial matters. I agree, neutrally curious to see how far Madison will go in revealing her true motivations. "He really is." Madison gushes, her excitement becoming more obvious. "He's shown me investment strategies that could triple the value of Mom's assets within just a few years. Instead of letting everything stagnate in old-fashioned businesses and conservative bank accounts, we could be building real wealth." I notice her use of "we" when discussing plans for Mom's assets, revealing assumptions about shared control that extend far beyond typical inheritance expectations. Madison isn't just planning to inherit family wealth, she's planning to manage it jointly with Trevor through strategies that undoubtedly benefit him more than the family. That sounds like quite an opportunity. I respond, maintaining my neutral tone while internally marveling at her audacity. Madison's eyes sparkle with anticipation as she leans closer, apparently unable to resist sharing her sense of triumph. "The beautiful thing is, Mom finally understands what I've been trying to tell her for years about the difference between us. You've never shown any real interest in family responsibilities or building something lasting." She pauses dramatically, clearly savoring this moment of perceived superiority. "While you've been playing with your little computer hobby, I've been learning real business skills and building relationships with people who understand wealth management." The phrase "little computer hobby" hits exactly the same dismissive note Mom used earlier, confirming that Madison has been feeding Mom language designed to minimize my career achievements. But more importantly, Madison's slip reveals something crucial: she knows my hobby has become financially successful. "My computer work has been going well lately," I say, carefully watching her reaction. "Better than I expected, actually." Madison's mask slips for just a moment, and I catch a flash of something that looks like panic before she recovers her composure. "Oh, that's nice. I hope you're finally making enough to support yourself properly." But the damage is done. Her initial reaction confirmed that she's been researching my business activities and discovered my success. Madison's campaign of lies about my financial situation wasn't based on ignorance. It was a calculated effort to undermine my reputation, while she knew I was actually thriving professionally. Actually, Madison, I've been meaning to ask you about something. I continued deciding to test how much she knows about my discoveries tonight. How are the restaurants doing financially? Mom seemed upset about something Harold told her earlier. Madison's expression tightens almost imperceptibly, but she maintains her confident facade. Oh, that's just normal business fluctuations. The economy has been challenging for small restaurants, but nothing we can't handle with proper management. Her casual dismissal of what Harold described as potential bankruptcy reveals either stunning dishonesty or complete delusion about the family's financial situation. Given the evidence I discovered upstairs and the anonymous investigation materials, Madison's confident response confirms she's been actively deceiving Mom about the extent of the business's problems. I'm sure your banking experience has been helpful with the financial management. I continue curious to see if she'll reveal any awareness of the missing deposits. Absolutely, Madison replies with obvious pride. Mom finally realized she needed someone with real financial expertise helping with the family enterprises. It's made such a difference having professional guidance instead of just hoping everything works out. The conversation takes an even more surreal turn as Madison describes herself as the solution to financial problems she's actually created. Her confidence seems genuine, as if she's convinced herself that stealing money from struggling businesses somehow represents professional financial management. Trevor's been impressed with how quickly I've picked up advanced portfolio management concepts. Madison continues clearly unable to resist boasting about her supposed sophistication. He says I have natural instincts for investment strategy and risk assessment. I realize Madison genuinely believes she's become a financial expert through her relationship with Trevor, not understanding that she's actually become a criminal accomplice, being manipulated by someone who specializes in romantic fraud. Her pride in her supposed expertise makes her betrayal even more tragic. It sounds like you and Trevor make quite a team. I observe, remembering the surveillance photos of them planning together at various locations. We really do, Madison agrees enthusiastically. He understands my ambitions and supports my goals in ways that most men never could. Plus, he brings professional credibility that opens doors I could never access on my own. As Madison continues describing her perfect relationship with Trevor, I realize she has no idea she's being used by a married man with a criminal history spanning multiple states. Her excitement about their partnership is genuine, making her eventual discovery of his true nature even more devastating. The conversation concludes with Madison returning to the dining room, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the crushing realization that my sister isn't just a criminal. She's also a victim of sophisticated manipulation who genuinely believes she's found love and success. The evidence in my phone could expose Trevor's crimes and save Madison from further exploitation, but it would also destroy her emotionally and professionally, while potentially sending her to prison for the theft she's already committed. As I prepare to return to the family gathering, I understand that the choice before me isn't just about justice or revenge. It's about deciding whether to save Madison from herself or let her face the consequences of choices she made while being manipulated by a professional predator. When I return to the dining room, the atmosphere has shifted into something more formal and ceremonious. Mom has moved to the head of the table where Dad used to sit during special occasions, and she's arranged the legal documents in front of her like a ceremonial scroll. The relatives have positioned their chairs to face her directly, creating an audience for whatever announcement she's prepared to deliver. Trevor sits beside Madison with his arm draped casually across the back of her chair, the picture of a supportive boyfriend witnessing his partner's moment of triumph. His smile carries the satisfaction of someone whose long-term planning is about to pay dividends, though. He maintains the respectful demeanor appropriate for a family gathering. Before we have dessert, I want to share something important with all of you. Mom begins her voice taking on the formal tone she reserves for significant family announcements. As you all know, your father and I worked very hard to build something meaningful for our daughters, something that would provide security and opportunity for future generations. Uncle Robert nods approvingly while Aunt Carol leans forward with obvious anticipation. The assembled relatives understand they're about to witness a defining family moment, the kind of inheritance discussion that shapes family dynamics for decades. Over the past few months, I've been working with my attorney to update our estate planning documents. Mom continues touching the papers in front of her with obvious reverence. These decisions haven't been easy, but they reflect the reality of who my daughters have become as adults and what they've demonstrated about their character and judgment. Madison tries to maintain a modest expression, but her excitement is becoming impossible to hide. She keeps glancing around the table as if to make sure everyone understands the significance of what's happening, clearly savoring this moment of official recognition for her supposed superiority. Family wealth isn't just about money. Mom explains, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each word. It's about values, responsibility, and ensuring that the next generation understands what it means to build something lasting. Your father always said that inheritance should go to the child who will protect and grow what we've worked to create. I feel the familiar knot forming in my stomach as Mom builds toward her announcement. But this time, the anxiety is mixed with something else, the strange calm that comes from understanding exactly what's about to happen and why it's based entirely on lies and manipulation. Madison has consistently demonstrated the qualities we value most in our family. Mom continues, her eyes focusing on my sister with obvious pride. Responsibility, stability, commitment to family enterprises, and the kind of financial wisdom that comes from real-world experience in business and banking. The praise flows over Madison like warm sunlight, and she practically glows under Mom's approval. Trevor squeezes her shoulder supportively, playing his role as the proud boyfriend, witnessing his partner's validation from family. In contrast, Mom's voice takes on a more disappointed tone as her attention shifts toward me. Some choices in life make it clear when someone isn't ready for the responsibilities that come with family wealth, when someone has shown repeatedly that they prioritize personal interests over family obligations. The change in Mom's tone creates uncomfortable silence around the table as everyone processes the implications of her words. Uncle Robert shifts uneasily in his chair, while Cousin Janet examines her hands with obvious discomfort. No one wants to witness a public family humiliation, but they're trapped by social convention and curiosity. Gianna, I love you as my daughter, but love doesn't mean pretending that all choices are equal or that all behaviors deserve the same rewards. Mom continues, her voice taking on the lecturing tone I remember from childhood punishments. Your history of poor judgment, financial irresponsibility, and lack of commitment to family values has made this decision necessary. Each accusation hits like a physical blow, even though I now understand they're based entirely on Madison's lies and manipulation. Hearing Mom list what she perceives as my character flaws in front of the assembled family creates a humiliation that goes beyond simple disappointment. The theft from my purse during your father's illness showed me something fundamental about your character. Mom continues, referring to the lie Madison told years ago that poisoned our relationship permanently. Someone willing to steal from their dying father's medical fund is someone who can't be trusted with family responsibilities. Madison's satisfied expression reveals that she's been waiting years for this public vindication, for the moment when Mom would officially acknowledge her version of family history in front of witnesses who matter. This isn't just about inheritance, it's about permanently establishing Madison as the good daughter and me as the problematic one. Your inability to maintain steady employment or build meaningful relationships demonstrates a pattern of instability that continues to this day. Mom adds delivering character assassination with surgical precision. While Madison has built a successful career and found a partner who shares her values, you continue to drift from one temporary situation to another. Trevor nods sympathetically as if he genuinely cares about my supposed struggles and supports Madison's family in their concern for my welfare. His performance is masterful, conveying exactly the right combination of understanding and disappointment that a caring future in-law should display. Therefore, effective immediately, I am revising my will to reflect the reality of my daughter's different paths in life. Mom announces picking up the legal documents with ceremonial gravity. Madison will inherit the family home, all 3 restaurant locations, my investment accounts, and the responsibility for maintaining our family's legacy. Madison's face lights up with pure joy as the official announcement confirms everything she's been working toward for years. She squeezes Trevor's hand tightly while accepting congratulations from various relatives who offer their approval and support for Mom's decision. Gianna, you will receive $5,000 and some jewelry that belonged to your grandmother. Mom continues her tone, suggesting this represents generous consideration for someone who doesn't deserve family assets. I hope these modest bequests will help you understand the importance of making better choices in your future relationships and career decisions. The calculated cruelty of the announcement exceeds anything I could have imagined. Mom hasn't just disinherited me, she's used the occasion to publicly list my supposed failures while positioning Madison as the daughter worthy of respect and trust. Every relative in this room will remember tonight as the moment when Mom officially declared Madison superior in every way that matters. I know this might be difficult to hear. Mom concludes, her voice taking on the patronizing tone of someone delivering tough love to a disappointing child. But sometimes, families have to make hard decisions based on proven character rather than equal treatment. I hope someday you'll understand that these choices reflect love, not punishment. The silence that follows feels suffocating as everyone waits to see how I'll respond to this comprehensive public rejection. Madison watches me with obvious anticipation, clearly expecting tears, arguments, or some kind of emotional breakdown that would confirm everything Mom believes about my character. Uncle Robert clears his throat uncomfortably while Aunt Carol fidgets with her napkin, both clearly wishing they weren't witnessing such an intimate family humiliation. The relatives want to support Mom's decision while avoiding the obvious cruelty of her delivery method. Instead of reacting with hurt or anger, I stand slowly and look directly at Mom with the calm confidence of someone who knows exactly what cards remain unplayed in this particular game. Thank you for clarifying your priorities, Mom. I say quietly, my voice steady despite the magnitude of what just happened. That information is actually very helpful for what I need to tell you next. The silence in the room becomes almost unbearable as Mom's words hang in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Every person at this table expects me to react with the kind of emotional breakdown that would validate their perception of me as unstable and inappropriate for family responsibilities. Madison sits poised like a predator, watching wounded prey, clearly anticipating the moment when I dissolve into tears or angry outbursts that prove everything she's told them about my character. Instead, I remain standing with my hands clasped calmly in front of me, allowing the weight of Mom's announcement to settle over the room without rushing to fill the uncomfortable space with desperate explanations or defensive arguments. Years of being misunderstood have taught me the power of patience, and tonight that patience will serve a purpose none of them can imagine. Actually, Mom, that doesn't matter anymore. I say finally, my voice carrying a steadiness that seems to surprise everyone at the table, because I've been hiding something that changes everything. The shift in energy is immediate and palpable. Madison's triumphant expression falters slightly as she processes the unexpected calm in my response, while Mom's eyebrows furrow with confusion and perhaps the first hint of unease. Uncle Robert straightens in his chair and Aunt Carol leans forward with sudden interest. Trevor's relaxed posture becomes more alert, and I notice his eyes narrow slightly as he studies my face for clues about what kind of revelation might be coming. His professional instincts as a manipulator are clearly warning him that something about this situation doesn't match his careful calculations. What could you possibly be hiding that would matter at this point? Madison asks with a nervous laugh that doesn't quite conceal the edge of worry in her voice. I mean, we're talking about serious family responsibilities, not whatever little project you've been working on lately. Her attempt to minimize whatever I might reveal sounds forced and desperate, suggesting she suspects my revelation might be more significant than she wants to acknowledge. The confidence she displayed just moments ago is beginning to crack around the edges. Oh, Madison, what I've been hiding is exactly about serious family responsibilities. I reply with a slight smile that seems to unnerve her even further. It's about who's really been protecting this family's interests and who's been destroying them from the inside. Mom's expression shifts from confusion to concern as she begins to sense that this conversation is heading in an unexpected direction. Gianna, what are you talking about? What exactly have you been hiding? I take a slow breath, savoring this moment of absolute power before everything they think they know about our family gets turned upside down. For years, Madison has controlled the narrative about who we are and what we've accomplished. Tonight, truth finally gets to speak for itself. What I've been hiding, Mom, is that some family secrets have a way of revealing themselves at exactly the right moment. I continue, my voice growing stronger with each word. And tonight, with all of you as witnesses, seems like the perfect time for some long overdue honesty about what's really been happening in this family. The mysterious nature of my statement creates visible anxiety around the table. Madison's hands begin to fidget with her jewelry while Trevor's casual confidence transforms into watchful tension. They're both trying to calculate what kind of information I might possess without appearing concerned in front of the family. Secrets. Mom repeats, her voice carrying a mixture of confusion and irritation. Gianna, this is neither the time nor the place for dramatic revelations. We're discussing serious family matters that require adult conversation, not whatever grievances you think justify disrupting tonight's announcement. Uncle Robert nods in agreement, clearly uncomfortable with the tension building around what should have been a straightforward family gathering. Maybe we should focus on supporting your mother's decisions instead of creating unnecessary conflict. But I can see doubt beginning to creep into their expressions as they process the complete lack of distress or desperation in my demeanor. Someone facing public humiliation and disinheritance shouldn't be this composed unless they possess information that fundamentally alters the situation. The thing about secrets, Uncle Robert, is that they're only powerful as long as they remain hidden. I explain calmly, making eye contact with each person around the table. Once truth comes to light, everything people thought they knew tends to change very quickly. Madison's nervous energy becomes more obvious as she shifts uncomfortably in her chair. Gianna, you're being deliberately vague and dramatic. If you have something to say, just say it instead of making cryptic statements that don't mean anything. Her demand for specifics reveals growing panic beneath her attempt to maintain control of the situation. Madison understands better than anyone else at this table exactly what kinds of secrets might emerge tonight, and her anxiety confirms that she knows how devastating the truth could be. Oh, I will definitely be specific, Madison, I promise with quiet confidence. In fact, I'm expecting some additional clarity to arrive very shortly. Sometimes the most important conversations require the right participants to be present. Trevor's expression becomes increasingly alert as he processes the implication that other people might be joining tonight's gathering. His professional paranoia is clearly activated by the suggestion that unknown parties are about to introduce evidence or information he hasn't accounted for. What other participants? Mom asks sharply, her patience obviously wearing thin with what she perceives as deliberate confusion and delay tactics. Gianna, either explain what you're talking about or sit down and let us finish this family discussion properly. Before I can respond, the doorbell rings with perfect timing, creating a moment of frozen tension around the dining room table. Everyone turns toward the sound with varying degrees of surprise and concern, but I remain perfectly calm as I check the time on my phone. That would be the clarity I mentioned, I explain with satisfaction, moving toward the front door. Some conversations are so important that they require professional guidance to ensure everyone understands exactly what's been happening. Madison's face goes pale as the implications of my words begin to sink in. Trevor's casual confidence evaporates, completely replaced by the sharp alertness of someone who recognizes potential danger. The other family members look confused and increasingly uncomfortable as they realize tonight's gathering is about to take an unexpected and possibly unpleasant turn. Professional guidance. Mom repeats, her voice rising with alarm. Gianna, what have you done? What kind of professional are you bringing into our private family matter? I pause at the dining room entrance, turning back to face the assembled family with complete composure and satisfaction. The kind of professional who specializes in protecting families from financial crimes, Mom. The kind who has been investigating the theft and fraud that's been destroying our family businesses for months, while everyone believed they were just struggling with normal economic challenges. The color drains from Madison's face completely as she understands that whatever protection she thought she had from her careful manipulation and Trevor's sophisticated planning has just evaporated. Trevor's expression hardens into the watchful calculation of someone preparing for confrontation with law enforcement. Mom stares at me in complete bewilderment, clearly unable to process the suggestion that criminal activity has been occurring within our family under her nose. The other relatives exchange worried glances as they begin to understand that tonight's inheritance announcement has collided with something much more serious and dangerous. As I walk toward the front door to welcome our unexpected but perfectly timed guest, I can feel the energy in the dining room shifting from celebration to crisis. Madison's carefully orchestrated moment of triumph is about to become something very different, and everyone in that room is beginning to sense that the evening they thought they understood was actually just the prelude to revelations that will change everything. The doorbell rings again with official insistence, and I smile with genuine satisfaction as I reach for the handle that will open the door to justice for my family and consequences for the people who have been betraying us for far too long. I open the front door to find Detective Sarah Walsh standing on the porch, her badge clearly visible on her jacket, and her professional demeanor immediately establishing the gravity of the situation. She's a woman in her early 40s, with steel gray eyes and an authoritative presence that commands immediate attention and respect. Behind her stand two uniformed officers, their expressions serious and prepared for whatever resistance they might encounter. Ms. Patterson. Detective Walsh asks, though her tone suggests she already knows exactly who I am. I'm Detective Sarah Walsh with the Financial Crimes Division. We spoke earlier about tonight's gathering. Yes, Detective Walsh, I reply formally, stepping aside to allow her entry. Everyone's in the dining room just as we discussed. The conversation confirms what the anonymous investigation materials suggested. I've been working with law enforcement to coordinate tonight's intervention. The timing isn't coincidental. It's the culmination of careful planning designed to catch Madison and Trevor at the moment when their criminal conspiracy would be most clearly demonstrated. As Detective Walsh and the officers enter our home, I hear chairs scraping against hardwood floors and urgent whispered conversations from the dining room. Madison's voice carries a sharp edge of panic, while Trevor's responses sound controlled but tense. The other family members seem to be asking confused questions about what's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Detective Sarah Walsh with the Financial Crimes Division. She announces as we enter the dining room, her badge held clearly visible for everyone to examine. I need to speak with Madison Patterson and Trevor Coleman regarding an ongoing criminal investigation. The formal announcement creates immediate chaos around the dining room table. Mom's face goes white with shock, while Uncle Robert pushes back from the table with obvious alarm. Aunt Carol gasps audibly, and Cousin Janet looks like she might faint from the unexpected drama. Madison jumps to her feet with desperate energy, her carefully composed facade cracking completely under the pressure of official law enforcement attention. There must be some mistake, officer. I work for First National Bank. I help families with legitimate financial services. I haven't done anything wrong. Trevor remains seated, but his posture becomes rigid and calculating like a predator, assessing escape routes while trying to appear cooperative. His charming boyfriend persona has been completely replaced by the cold wariness of someone with extensive experience dealing with criminal investigations. Ms. Patterson, we have evidence of systematic embezzlement from family businesses totaling over $60,000 in the past 6 months alone. Detective Walsh explains with professional precision, we also have documentation of bank fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud involving both you and Mr. Coleman. The specific charges and dollar amounts hit the family like physical blows. Mom grabs the edge of the table for support while processing the magnitude of what Detective Walsh is describing. The missing restaurant deposits that Harold discovered suddenly make perfect sense as part of a comprehensive criminal enterprise. That's impossible. Madison protests desperately, her voice rising toward hysteria. I've been helping manage the family restaurants because Mom needed financial expertise. Every transaction has been legitimate business activity. Detective Walsh reaches into her jacket and removes a tablet device, swiping through what appears to be photographic evidence. Ms. Patterson, we have surveillance footage of you removing cash from restaurant registers, manipulating deposit slips, and conducting fraudulent transactions designed to conceal the theft of operating funds. She turns the tablet toward Madison, displaying a high-resolution photograph that clearly shows her taking money from the cash register at the Riverside location. Madison's face appears clearly in the image, along with a timestamp that corresponds to a day when she reported normal business activity to Mom. We also have recordings of conversations between you and Mr. Coleman discussing strategies for gaining control of family assets through inheritance manipulation. Detective Walsh continues producing additional evidence that matches the materials I received from the anonymous investigator. Trevor finally speaks, his voice carefully controlled, despite the obvious desperation of his situation. Detective, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding about my relationship with this family. I'm simply Madison's boyfriend offering support and advice based on my professional experience in financial services. Detective Walsh's expression hardens as she focuses her attention on Trevor with obvious recognition and satisfaction. Mr. Coleman, we've been tracking your activities across multiple states for over 2 years. Your real name is Marcus Trevor Waldman, and you're currently wanted for fraud charges in California, Nevada, and Arizona. The revelation that Trevor's identity is completely fabricated sends shockwaves around the table. Madison stares at him with growing horror as she begins to understand the extent of the deception she's been living within for months. You're also currently married to Jennifer Waldman of San Diego, who filed a missing person report when you disappeared with $47,000 from their joint accounts. Detective Walsh adds with obvious satisfaction, bigamy and interstate fraud significantly increase the federal charges you're facing. Trevor's careful composure finally cracks as he realizes the full scope of law enforcement's knowledge about his criminal activities. His multiple identities and ongoing fraudulent schemes have been systematically documented while he believed he was operating undetected. Madison, did you know your boyfriend is married? Mom asks with a voice that barely rises above a whisper. Her shock at the criminal charges has been compounded by the revelation that everything she believed about Madison's relationship was based on lies. Madison shakes her head, frantically, tears streaming down her face as she processes the complete destruction of everything she thought she understood about her life. No, Mom, I had no idea. Trevor told me he was single. We've been planning a future together. The pathetic desperation in Madison's voice reveals that she genuinely believed she was in a loving relationship with someone who shared her goals and values. Trevor's manipulation was so sophisticated that Madison never suspected she was being used as an access point to family wealth. Ms. Patterson, we also have evidence that Mr. Coleman has been coaching you in financial fraud techniques while using your access to family businesses for money laundering operations. Detective Walsh explains with clinical precision, your relationship was part of an organized criminal enterprise designed to systematically strip assets from your family. Uncle Robert finds his voice finally asking the question everyone at the table is thinking, how long has this been going on? How much money are we talking about total? Detective Walsh consults her notes with professional thoroughness. Our investigation suggests the systematic theft began approximately 8 months ago, shortly after Ms. Patterson increased her involvement in family business management. Total documented losses exceed $120,000 when you include fraudulent loans, manipulated supplier payments, and direct cash theft. The enormous sum represents far more than the restaurant shortfalls Mom learned about earlier. Madison and Trevor have been conducting a comprehensive financial assault on the family's assets while using Madison's trusted position to conceal the extent of their crimes. The investigation began when Ms. Gianna Patterson contacted our office with concerns about irregularities in family business finances. Detective Walsh explains acknowledging my role in bringing law enforcement attention to Madison's activities. Ms. Patterson provided crucial cooperation that enabled us to document the full scope of the criminal enterprise. Mom turns toward me with an expression of complete bewilderment, clearly struggling to understand how I knew to contact authorities, while she remained completely unaware of any problems beyond normal business challenges. Gianna knew about this, Mom asks weakly. How could you know when I didn't see anything wrong? Before I can answer, Detective Walsh produces handcuffs and approaches Madison with official authority. Madison Patterson, you're under arrest for embezzlement, bank fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Madison's legs give out and she collapses back into her chair as the reality of her situation finally penetrates her shock and denial. The confident, successful daughter who was celebrating her inheritance just minutes ago has been transformed into a criminal defendant facing years in federal prison. The second officer moves toward Trevor with similar efficiency. Marcus Trevor Waldman, you're under arrest for fraud, bigamy, conspiracy, and violation of federal interstate commerce laws. Trevor offers no resistance as the handcuffs are applied, though his expression carries the cold calculation of someone already planning legal strategies for minimizing his sentence. His years of experience with criminal investigations have taught him when cooperation serves his interests better than resistance. As both Madison and Trevor are led toward the front door under arrest, the dining room falls into stunned silence. The family inheritance celebration has become a crime scene, and everyone present is struggling to process the complete reversal of everything they believed about Madison's character and achievements. Mom remains frozen in her chair, staring at the legal documents that were supposed to formalize Madison's inheritance of businesses that Madison was systematically destroying through theft. The irony of rewarding criminal behavior with family assets creates a situation too surreal for immediate comprehension. Detective Walsh turns to address the remaining family members before departing. We'll need statements from all of you over the next few days as we complete our investigation. Ms. Gianna Patterson will be contacted regarding testimony for the prosecution phase of this case. As the law enforcement officers depart with Madison and Trevor in custody, our dining room feels like the aftermath of a natural disaster. The carefully planned family celebration has been replaced by the devastating reality that one daughter was systematically betraying the family that trusted her most. The silence that follows is deafening as we all try to process the magnitude of what just occurred and what it means for relationships and trust that will need to be rebuilt from the ground up. The house feels unnaturally quiet after Detective Walsh and the officers leave with Madison and Trevor in custody. The remaining family members sit in stunned silence around the dining room table, still processing the complete reversal of everything they believed about tonight's gathering. Mom stares at the inheritance documents with obvious bewilderment, clearly struggling to understand how her careful family planning collided so dramatically with criminal investigations. Uncle Robert is the first to find his voice, though it comes out hoarse with shock. Patricia, how could we not have known? How could Madison have been stealing money for months without anyone noticing? Before Mom can respond, all eyes turn toward me as they remember Detective Walsh's revelation about my role in initiating the investigation. The family that spent the evening lecturing me about responsibility and financial wisdom suddenly realizes I was the only person who recognized the criminal activity destroying their assets. Gianna, Mom says slowly, her voice carrying a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. Detective Walsh said you contacted their office about irregularities in the business finances. How did you know there were problems when I didn't understand anything was wrong? I take a deep breath, understanding that this moment requires complete honesty about secrets I've been keeping for years. The family that dismissed my career achievements and financial acumen is about to learn exactly how wrong their assumptions have been. Mom, there's something I need to tell all of you about what I've really been doing for the past few years. I begin carefully knowing that my next words will fundamentally change how they understand our family dynamics. My computer consulting work isn't a small hobby or temporary project. I own a cybersecurity consulting firm that generates over $3 million in annual revenue. The silence that follows my announcement is profound and complete. Uncle Robert's mouth falls open while Aunt Carol stares at me as if I've suddenly started speaking a foreign language. Cousin Janet looks back and forth between Mom and me, clearly trying to process information that contradicts everything she's been told about my professional situation. Mom shakes her head with obvious disbelief. That's impossible, Gianna. You said you were doing computer work, but you never mentioned anything about millions of dollars. If you were that successful, why wouldn't you tell your family? Because every time I tried to discuss my work, you dismissed it as playing with computers. I replied gently but firmly. Because Madison convinced you that I was financially irresponsible and possibly involved with drugs. Because this family has spent years treating my achievements as embarrassments while celebrating Madison's assistant manager position at a small-town bank. The truth hangs heavy in the room as they begin to understand how completely their perceptions of my success and Madison's achievements were manipulated by lies and deliberate deception. $3 million, Uncle Robert repeats weakly, as if saying the number might help him process its magnitude. You're telling us you've been making millions while we worried about whether you could support yourself. I reach for my phone and open the business banking application that shows real-time account balances for Patterson Digital Security Solutions. The screen displays numbers that make Uncle Robert whistle softly and cause Aunt Carol to lean forward for a closer look. Last year, my company handled cybersecurity consulting for 17 Fortune 500 companies and 43 smaller corporations. I explained scrolling through client lists and revenue reports. We specialize in protecting financial institutions from the exact kind of fraud Madison and Trevor were committing against our family. Mom stares at the phone screen with obvious shock, her eyes tracking across account balances and client names that represent levels of business success far beyond anything she imagined possible for either of her daughters. But why didn't you tell us? She asks with a voice that carries hurt along with confusion. Why would you let us think you were struggling when you were actually this successful? I consider how to explain years of family dynamics that made honesty about my achievements seem impossible. Because Madison had already convinced you that I was irresponsible and unreliable. Because every time I mentioned business success, you assumed I was exaggerating or lying. Because this family made it clear that Madison's conventional career path was more valuable than my unconventional success. The weight of wasted years and missed opportunities settles over the conversation as they begin to understand how Madison's manipulation poisoned relationships and prevented honest communication within our family. If you're this successful, how did you know about the problems with the restaurants? Aunt Carol asks clearly, trying to piece together the timeline of events that led to tonight's dramatic confrontation. Because I've been secretly investing in the family businesses for over 2 years. I reply, producing additional documents from my phone that show financial transfers and investment records. When the restaurant started struggling financially, I began providing anonymous funding to keep them operating while I investigated what was causing the problems. Mom's face goes pale as she processes this revelation. You've been supporting the restaurants the money I thought was coming from improved business performance. I nod, scrolling through bank records that show systematic transfers designed to cover operating expenses and prevent the business failures that would have devastated Mom's retirement security. I transferred over $400,000 into the business accounts over the past 18 months, enough to cover the money Madison was stealing, plus additional capital for genuine improvements. The numbers represent more money than most of the people at this table will earn in their entire careers, casually donated to protect family businesses that were supposed to be my inheritance, while Madison systematically destroyed them from within. $400,000. Mom repeats in a whisper, her voice carrying the full weight of understanding how completely she misunderstood her daughter's relative financial positions. You spent $400,000 protecting businesses I was planning to leave to Madison. Uncle Robert shakes his head in amazement. Gianna, why would you invest that much money in businesses you weren't even going to inherit? Why would you protect Madison's future when she was actively undermining your relationship with the family? The question cuts to the heart of family loyalty and responsibility that Madison exploited, while I honored despite personal cost. Because they're family businesses that Dad built and Mom depends on for her retirement security. Because protecting the family was more important than protecting my own interests. I show them additional documentation proving that my anonymous investments prevented the complete collapse of all 3 restaurant locations. Without my financial support, the businesses would have declared bankruptcy months ago, leaving Mom with crushing debt instead of the modest assets she planned to bequeath. The restaurants are actually profitable now. I continue displaying current financial statements that show healthy cash flows and positive growth trends. Once I identified the theft patterns and implemented better financial controls, the underlying businesses began generating sustainable returns. Mom studies the financial reports with obvious amazement, seeing evidence of business success that contradicts everything she believed about the restaurant's prospects. These numbers show the businesses are thriving. How is that possible when Harold told me they were facing bankruptcy? Because Madison was stealing enough money each month to create artificial losses, while I was replacing those funds plus additional capital for genuine improvements. I explain with clinical precision. She created the appearance of business failure, while I secretly ensured business success. The elegant simplicity of the deception becomes clear as they understand how Madison used her theft to justify recommendations about liquidating assets she was simultaneously destroying through criminal activity. Cousin Janet finds her voice finally asking the question that's been building throughout this revelation. Gianna, if you've been this successful and you've been protecting the family businesses, why didn't you just tell us the truth, instead of letting Madison take credit for everything? I consider the complex emotions that drove my decision to operate anonymously, rather than seeking recognition for my contributions to family welfare, because I wanted to know who my family really was when they thought I had nothing to offer, because I needed to understand whether you loved me for myself or only for what I could provide financially. The honest answer creates uncomfortable silence as they realize their treatment of me was based entirely on assumptions about my financial value rather than recognition of my character or achievements. Tonight's inheritance announcement wasn't about rewarding good behavior. It was about ensuring family wealth went to the daughter they perceived as more financially valuable. You've been testing us, Mom says slowly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who realizes she failed an examination she didn't know she was taking. You've been watching us choose Madison over you while you secretly protected everything we claim to value most. The conversation ends with family members staring at financial documents that prove everything they believed about their daughter's relative worth was not just wrong, but completely inverted from reality. I was the successful daughter protecting family interests while appearing unsuccessful, and Madison was the criminal daughter destroying family interests while appearing responsible. Tonight's inheritance announcement would have rewarded betrayal while punishing loyalty based entirely on sophisticated manipulation that fooled everyone except the person they trusted least. The weight of revelation settles over the dining room, like dust after an explosion, leaving everyone struggling to process the complete inversion of everything they thought they understood about our family. Mom sits staring at the financial documents scattered across the table, occasionally shaking her head as if trying to wake up from a particularly vivid nightmare. Uncle Robert breaks the silence first, his voice carrying the tone of someone who needs to make amends. "Gianna, I owe you an enormous apology. We've been lecturing you about responsibility and career success while you've been more successful than any of us imagined. I feel like a complete fool." His admission opens the floodgates for similar confessions from around the table. Aunt Carol reaches across to squeeze my hand with tears in her eyes, clearly devastated by her role in perpetuating Madison's false narrative about my character and achievements. "I never believed you would steal from your mother's purse." Uncle Robert continues, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "When Madison first told us about that situation, it didn't match the Gianna we knew from your childhood. You were always honest and thoughtful, even when you were making mistakes." Mom looks up sharply at Uncle Robert's words, clearly surprised to learn that other family members harbored doubts about Madison's version of events. "You didn't believe Madison when she told you about the theft." "Patricia, that story never made sense," Aunt Carol interjects gently but firmly. "Gianna was dealing with your husband's illness and your family's financial stress by working extra hours at her part-time job and maintaining perfect grades in her advanced classes. When would she have had time for drug use? And why would someone so focused on helping the family steal money from medical expenses?" The questions reveal logical inconsistencies that other family members noticed, but never voiced directly, allowing Madison's manipulation to succeed despite doubts about its accuracy. They chose to support Mom's beliefs rather than challenging narrative that seemed to cause her additional stress during an already difficult period. Cousin Janet nods in agreement. Plus, Madison's story kept changing in small ways. First it was $20 missing, then it was $50. Then she claimed she witnessed the actual theft. Then she said she found drug paraphernalia. Consistent truth doesn't usually require constant adjustments to details. I listened to these admissions with mixed emotions, grateful for their eventual honesty, but saddened by years of misunderstanding that could have been avoided if they had expressed their doubts more directly. Their silence enabled Madison's deception while leaving me isolated and blamed for problems I didn't create. "Why didn't any of you say something at the time?" Mom asks with obvious hurt in her voice. "If you had concerns about Madison's story, why did you let me believe something terrible about Gianna for all these years?" Uncle Robert shifts uncomfortably before answering with painful honesty. "Because you were dealing with your husband's illness and death, Patricia. Adding family conflict about which daughter to trust seemed cruel when you needed support, not additional stress. We figured the truth would come out eventually without us having to force the issue." The explanation reveals how Madison's timing made her lies particularly effective. By accusing me of drug theft during Dad's final illness, she created a situation where challenging her story seemed insensitive to Mom's already overwhelming grief and stress. I also wondered about Madison's sudden interest in fashion and expensive restaurants during the same period, when she was supposedly concerned about family financial struggles. Aunt Carol adds quietly, "For someone worried about our economic situation, she seemed to be spending money very freely on luxury items." Mom frowns as she processes this observation. "What do you mean about expensive spending? Madison has always been careful with money." Patricia, Madison started wearing designer clothes and jewelry that cost more than her bank salary could support, Aunt Carol explains gently. When I asked her about it, she always had explanations about sales or gifts from friends, but the timing seemed suspicious given her concerns about family finances. Additional details emerge as family members share observations they kept private for years out of respect for Mom's grief and Madison's position as the favored daughter. Each revelation adds weight to the growing understanding that Madison's manipulation was more comprehensive and longer-lasting than anyone realized. I noticed Madison always volunteered to handle restaurant deposits and bookkeeping tasks, Uncle Robert adds. At the time, it seemed helpful and responsible. Looking back, it was probably creating opportunities for the theft Detective Walsh described tonight. Cousin Janet contributes her own troubling memory. Madison asked me detailed questions about your investment accounts and insurance policies last Christmas. She said she was helping you with financial planning, but the questions felt more like she was conducting an inventory of family assets. The pattern of behavior they describe reveals systematic preparation for the criminal enterprise that culminated in tonight's arrest. Madison spent months positioning herself as helpful and trustworthy while gathering information and access necessary for comprehensive theft. She also seemed unusually interested in family legal documents, Aunt Carol remembers. Madison asked me about inheritance laws and estate planning strategies, claiming she wanted to help you optimize your legacy planning. I thought it showed maturity and family commitment. Mom's expression becomes increasingly pained as she realizes how thoroughly Madison exploited her trust while manipulating the entire family into supporting her deception. She convinced me to give her access to business accounts and legal documents by presenting herself as the responsible daughter who wanted to help with family obligations. The conversation takes an even more troubling turn when Uncle Robert mentions Madison's relationship with Trevor. That boyfriend of hers always made me uncomfortable. He asked too many questions about family finances and seemed more interested in our assets than in Madison herself. I thought the same thing. Cousin Janet agrees quickly. Trevor studied our house and asked detailed questions about property values and maintenance costs. His curiosity felt more professional than personal. Their observations about Trevor's behavior confirm that multiple family members recognize predatory patterns but dismiss their concerns out of respect for Madison's judgment and relationship choices. Why didn't anyone warn me about their concerns? Mom asks with growing frustration. If Trevor was obviously suspicious and Madison was acting strangely, why was I the only person who didn't see the problems? The question creates uncomfortable silence as family members acknowledge their failure to protect Mom from manipulation they recognized but chose not to address directly. Their desire to avoid family conflict enabled criminal behavior that could have been stopped much sooner. Because Madison convinced us that you finally had the relationship with her that you always wanted, Uncle Robert admits reluctantly. She positioned her increased involvement in family affairs as evidence that she was stepping up to support you during difficult times. Challenging that narrative felt like undermining something positive that was bringing you happiness. Aunt Carol nods sadly. We could see how proud you were of Madison's supposed maturity and financial responsibility. After years of worrying about both your daughters having one who seemed successful and committed to family obligations gave you such relief that we didn't want to destroy that peace with suspicions we couldn't prove. Their explanation reveals how Madison's manipulation succeeded by giving Mom exactly what she hoped for a daughter who appeared to validate her parenting and family values. Challenging Madison meant destroying Mom's sense of success as a mother during a period when she desperately needed that validation. So everyone could see problems with Madison's behavior and Trevor's intentions, but nobody wanted to hurt my feelings by suggesting I was being deceived. Mom summarizes with bitter understanding. Meanwhile, I was punishing Gianna for imaginary crimes while rewarding Madison for real ones. The family conversation ends with everyone understanding that Madison's betrayal succeeded because she exploited their love for Mom and their desire to protect her from additional stress and disappointment. Their silence enabled criminal behavior while isolating me from family support during years when I most needed their understanding and recognition. Tonight's revelations forced them to confront how their good intentions created conditions that rewarded deception while punishing honesty. The emotional weight of family revelations settles over us as Mom processes the magnitude of Madison's betrayal and her own role in enabling it. Tears stream down her face as she looks at me with an expression that carries years of accumulated guilt, regret, and dawning understanding of how completely she misunderstood her daughters. Gianna, I don't know how to begin apologizing for what I've done to you. Mom says, her voice breaking with emotion. I spent 15 years believing lies about your character while praising the daughter who was actually destroying everything your father and I built together. She reaches across the table toward me with trembling hands, her eyes pleading for forgiveness that she clearly believes she doesn't deserve. I called you irresponsible and financially unstable while you were secretly saving our family businesses. I gave Madison access to steal from us while cutting you out of inheritance you were actually protecting with your own money. The raw pain in Mom's voice reveals the depth of her realization about how thoroughly Madison manipulated her love and trust. She's not just apologizing for tonight's inheritance announcement, she's confronting 15 years of favoritism based entirely on lies and deception. I understand why you kept your success secret from us now. Mom continues through her tears. You wanted to know if we loved you for who you are, rather than what you could provide. And we failed that test completely, didn't we? We chose the daughter who told us what we wanted to hear, instead of the daughter who actually deserved our trust and respect. Uncle Robert and Aunt Carol watched this conversation with obvious discomfort, recognizing their own roles in enabling Madison's manipulation, while failing to support me during years when I needed family understanding most. Mom, you don't need to apologize for being deceived by someone who specialized in deception, I replied gently, though my voice carries the weight of years of accumulated hurt. Madison spent years learning exactly how to manipulate your emotions and exploit your trust. Trevor trained her in sophisticated fraud techniques that fooled banks and law enforcement initially. But Mom shakes her head firmly, refusing to accept explanations that minimize her responsibility for the damage done to our relationship. No, Gianna, I chose to believe Madison's stories because they confirmed what I already suspected about you. I wanted to believe you were the problem daughter because it made Madison's supposed success more meaningful. Her brutal honesty about her motivations cuts deeper than any anger or accusation could have. She's acknowledging that her favoritism toward Madison wasn't just based on misinformation, it was based on psychological needs that Madison's lies satisfied. I wanted one daughter I could point to with pride while treating the other as a cautionary tale about poor life choices, Mom admits with devastating self-awareness. Madison's stories about your problems made me feel better about my parenting because at least one daughter turned out the way I hoped. The conversation is interrupted by my phone ringing with a call from Detective Walsh, whose timing suggests she has updates about Madison and Trevor's arrest and processing. I answer the call on speaker so the family can hear any developments about the criminal charges. Ms. Patterson, I wanted to update you on tonight's arrests and discuss some additional matters related to the investigation. Detective Walsh begins with her professional efficiency. Both suspects are being processed on the charges we discussed, and initial questioning has revealed additional criminal activity we'll need to investigate. The news about additional crimes doesn't surprise me given Trevor's apparent expertise in financial fraud and Madison's months of access to family business accounts. More importantly for your family's immediate situation, Detective Walsh continues, we'll need to freeze all restaurant business accounts pending completion of our investigation. This means your mother won't have access to operating funds until we can separate legitimate business assets from stolen money. The practical implications hit Mom immediately as she realizes the restaurants won't be able to operate without access to their bank accounts. Detective Walsh, how long will the accounts be frozen? Those businesses employ 17 people who depend on their paychecks. Typically, these investigations take 60 to 90 days for preliminary resolution, Detective Walsh explains. However, if someone can demonstrate legitimate ownership of replacement operating capital, we can potentially expedite the process. I understand immediately what Detective Walsh is suggesting, and I make a decision that surprises even me with its generosity. Detective Walsh, what if I provided temporary operating capital from my personal business accounts? Would that allow the restaurants to continue operating while you complete the investigation? Mom stares at me in shock while the other family members exchange amazed glances. I'm offering to provide even more financial support to protect businesses and employees after being publicly humiliated and disinherited by the very people I've been helping for years. That would certainly expedite the process, Detective Walsh confirms. If you can document the source of replacement funds and agree to cooperate with our ongoing investigation, we can probably restore basic business operations within a week. I look around the table at family members who spent the evening lecturing me about responsibility and financial wisdom, while I was actually providing both in ways they never imagined. I'll transfer whatever capital is needed to keep the restaurants operating and protect the employees' jobs. Uncle Robert finds his voice first clearly amazed by my response to their treatment of me. Gianna, after everything that's happened tonight, after the way we treated you and the inheritance decision, why would you still protect the family businesses? The question goes to the heart of what family loyalty means when it's based on principle rather than reciprocal benefit. Because the employees didn't do anything wrong and they shouldn't suffer because Madison chose to steal from the businesses that provide their livelihoods. Because Dad built those restaurants to support our family and community, and that mission doesn't change because one person betrayed it. Mom begins crying harder as she processes my willingness to continue protecting interests that she officially removed from my inheritance just hours ago. Gianna, I can't let you spend more of your own money to save businesses I was planning to give to Madison. It's not fair to ask you to clean up our mess while getting nothing in return. I consider how to explain that true family responsibility isn't contingent on personal benefit or official recognition. Mom, I'm not protecting these businesses for personal gain or inheritance rights. I'm protecting them because they represent Dad's legacy and employ people who depend on them for their family's security. The conversation takes an unexpected turn when I outline a comprehensive proposal that could salvage the family's financial situation while ensuring long-term stability for everyone involved. Instead of trying to repair the damage Madison and Trevor caused, what if we restructured everything from the ground up? I suggest pulling out my phone to show financial projections and business plans I've been developing. I could buy the restaurants from you at fair market value, modernize their operations through my business expertise, and hire you as the ceremonial president while I handle financial management. The proposal offers Mom a meaningful role in businesses she built while ensuring professional management that prevents future financial disasters. She would maintain dignity and purpose without carrying responsibility for complex financial decisions that Madison exploited. You would buy the restaurants, Mom asks with obvious confusion. But why would you want to own businesses that were losing money before Madison's theft? I show them detailed financial analyses proving that the restaurants have strong underlying profitability when properly managed. Because once we remove the theft and implement proper financial controls, these are actually excellent businesses with loyal customers and strong community support. The problems were artificial, created by criminal activity rather than market conditions. Uncle Robert studies the business projections with obvious amazement. These numbers show the restaurants could be generating substantial profits within 6 months with proper management. Exactly. I confirm scrolling through operational improvements and marketing strategies that could dramatically increase revenue while reducing costs. Madison and Trevor's theft masked the business's true potential by creating artificial losses that disguised their underlying strength. The proposal creates an opportunity for Mom to maintain connection to businesses that represent her life's work, while ensuring they're managed by someone with both the expertise and capital necessary for long-term success. I would also establish trust funds for all current employees, ensuring job security and providing pathways for advancement that reward loyalty and performance. I continue outlining benefits that extend protection beyond immediate family to the community that depends on these businesses. Mom looks around the table at family members who are clearly amazed by my generosity and forward-thinking approach to solving problems that weren't my responsibility to address. Gianna, why would you do all this for us after the way we've treated you? She asks with a voice that carries years of accumulated regret. Why would you save our family's legacy when we were ready to exclude you from it entirely? I consider how to explain that true family love isn't conditional on reciprocal treatment or official recognition. Because family isn't about what you can get, Mom. It's about what you're willing to give to protect the people you love, even when they don't understand or appreciate your efforts. The evening ends with Mom accepting my proposal to restructure the family businesses, while establishing new relationships based on honesty rather than manipulation. For the first time in 15 years, we're operating from a foundation of truth about who we really are and what we've actually accomplished. The inheritance that was supposed to reward Madison's supposed responsibility will instead enable genuine family healing based on proven character rather than false narratives. 6 months later, I stand in the renovated dining room of the Riverside restaurant location, watching Mom greet regular customers with the warm hospitality that made these businesses successful long before Madison's criminal interference. The walls display new artwork featuring local artists, and the updated menu reflects both traditional recipes Dad created and innovative dishes that attract younger customers. The transformation has exceeded even my optimistic projections. All 3 restaurant locations are generating healthy profits while providing secure employment for 23 people, including several new hires who brought fresh energy and ideas to operations that had stagnated under financial stress. Mom wears a simple but elegant name tag identifying her as President Patterson Family Restaurants, a title that provides meaningful recognition for her role in building these businesses while acknowledging the professional management structure that ensures their continued success. She moves through the dining room with obvious pride and satisfaction, finally able to enjoy the fruits of her labor without constant financial worry. Table 12 wants to thank you personally for the mushroom risotto, Mom tells me as she approaches the corner booth, where I'm reviewing quarterly financial reports. Mrs. Henderson said it's the best dish we've ever served. The new menu items represent collaboration between our existing kitchen staff and a culinary consultant I hired to modernize our offerings while maintaining the comfort food focus that attracted loyal customers for decades. The investment in professional development has paid dividends in both customer satisfaction and employee morale. That's wonderful, I reply, closing my laptop to give Mom my full attention. How are you feeling about the expansion plans for the downtown location? We've been discussing adding weekend brunch service and extending evening hours to capture additional revenue opportunities that our financial analysis identified. Mom initially worried about the complexity of operational changes, but she's gained confidence as she's seen how systematic planning produces positive results. I think we should move forward with the brunch expansion, Mom says with growing enthusiasm. The weekend foot traffic downtown has increased significantly since the farmers market started, and our location could capture that business if we adjust our service schedule. Her comfort with business planning and strategic thinking has grown dramatically as she's learned to work with professional financial management rather than relying on family members whose motivations weren't always aligned with business success. The partnership we've developed allows her to focus on customer relationships and community engagement while trusting me to handle complex financial decisions. Have you heard anything about Madison lately? Mom asks quietly, her voice carrying the complex emotions of someone still processing her daughter's betrayal and its consequences. Madison is serving an 18-month sentence in federal prison after pleading guilty to embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy charges. Her cooperation with prosecutors helped secure Trevor's conviction on multiple counts, including bigamy and interstate fraud, that will likely keep him incarcerated for several years. She wrote me another letter last week. I reply, retrieving the envelope from my purse. She's been attending financial literacy classes and counseling programs that help inmates understand how they were manipulated by criminal partners. The letters from Madison have evolved from desperate denials and blame shifting to genuine remorse and growing understanding of how Trevor exploited her desires for success and recognition. Her transformation appears authentic, though rebuilding trust will require years of consistent changed behavior. She asks about you constantly. I continue scanning Madison's careful handwriting that reflects hours of thoughtful composition. She wants to know if you're healthy and happy, whether the restaurants are successful, and if there's any possibility for forgiveness when she's released. Mom's eyes fill with tears as she considers the complex emotions involved in loving someone who betrayed fundamental family trust while being victimized by sophisticated criminal manipulation. Madison was simultaneously perpetrator and victim, making her situation more tragic than simply criminal. "Do you think she's really changed?" Mom asks with the hope of someone who desperately wants to believe redemption is possible for her daughter. I consider Madison's progression from angry denial through gradual acceptance to what appears to be genuine remorse and self-reflection. I think she's finally understanding how Trevor manipulated her desires for success and family recognition. Whether that understanding translates to permanent change remains to be seen. The question of Madison's potential redemption represents the larger challenge facing our family as we work to rebuild relationships damaged by years of deception and manipulation. Trust once broken requires time and consistent evidence to repair. "I've been thinking about visiting her next month," Mom admits quietly. "I know she made terrible choices, but she's still my daughter and I can't abandon her completely." The decision to maintain relationship with Madison while protecting herself from further manipulation represents the kind of balanced wisdom Mom has developed through counseling and time for reflection. She's learning to love Madison without enabling her destructive behaviors. I think that's a healthy choice. I agree, remembering my own complex feelings about Madison's situation. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting or pretending the betrayal didn't happen. It just means choosing love over bitterness while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Our conversation is interrupted by Detective Walsh, who arrives for our monthly update meeting about the ongoing investigation and asset recovery process. She's become a regular presence in our lives as we work through the complex process of documenting criminal activity and recovering stolen assets. "Good news about the asset recovery," Detective Walsh announces as she joins us in the booth. "We've identified additional accounts where Trevor hid stolen funds, and the federal prosecutor believes we can recover about 80% of the documented losses. The recovered money will help offset the financial damage Madison and Trevor caused, though the emotional and relationship costs can't be calculated in purely monetary terms. More importantly, the investigation has provided closure and justice that enables our family to move forward without constant uncertainty about additional criminal activity. The prosecutor also wanted me to thank you again for your cooperation throughout this investigation." Detective Walsh continues, addressing me directly. "Your initial report and ongoing assistance made it possible to build cases that will prevent these suspects from victimizing other families. The investigation revealed that Trevor had targeted at least 6 other families across 4 states, using similar romantic manipulation strategies to gain access to assets and financial information. Madison's cooperation with prosecutors helped identify his other victims and recover additional stolen funds. Has anyone contacted Trevor's wife in California?" Mom asks, clearly concerned about the woman who was also victimized by his deception. "Jennifer Waldman has been incredibly grateful for the information Madison provided about Trevor's criminal activities," Detective Walsh explains. "She's filing for divorce and pursuing civil remedies to recover the money he stole from their joint accounts before disappearing." The conversation concludes with Detective Walsh providing contact information for victim services and support groups that help families recover from financial crimes. The resources will be valuable as we continue processing the emotional impact of betrayal by someone we loved and trusted. After Detective Walsh leaves, Mom and I sit quietly together, watching the lunch crowd enjoy meals prepared in kitchens that represent Dad's legacy and our family's commitment to community service. The restaurants have become symbols of resilience and renewal rather than reminders of betrayal and loss. "Gianna, I want you to know that watching you handle this crisis has taught me things about family and forgiveness that I never understood before." Mom says with quiet sincerity. You protected people who had hurt you, invested your own money to save businesses you weren't going to inherit, and offered grace to family members who didn't deserve it. Her words acknowledged the character growth that emerged from confronting family crisis with principle-based decision-making rather than emotional reaction or desire for revenge. The lesson I've learned is that true strength isn't about winning or proving you're right, I reply, reflecting on the journey from public humiliation to family reconciliation. It's about responding to cruelty with wisdom and choosing protection over punishment when people you love make terrible mistakes. The conversation ends with us watching afternoon sunlight stream through windows that frame a community we've helped preserve and strengthen through crisis. The restaurants employ people who depend on steady income for their families. Security serve customers who appreciate quality food and warm hospitality and represent values that survived criminal assault because they were defended by love rather than abandoned in anger. That evening, as I review financial reports that show continued growth and stability across all 3 locations, I understand that family isn't defined by shared genetics or official inheritance documents. Family is defined by willingness to sacrifice personal interests for collective welfare, to protect rather than exploit trust, and to choose healing over bitterness when relationships are damaged by betrayal. Madison's criminal choices taught our family painful lessons about manipulation and deception, but they also revealed the strength that emerges when people respond to crisis with integrity rather than retaliation. The inheritance I lost on paper became the character I gained through testing, and the family that rejected me based on lies eventually embraced me based on proven love. 6 months after the night that changed everything, we've built something better than we had before: relationships based on truth rather than favoritism, businesses managed with expertise rather than exploitation, and family bonds strengthened by surviving betrayal without abandoning love. The ultimate life lesson isn't about justice or revenge, but about the choice between protection and punishment when people we love make destructive decisions. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving you're right, but demonstrating that family love can survive even the most devastating betrayal when it's defended with wisdom rather than destroyed by bitterness. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire journey. This story really resonated with me because it shows how family dynamics can be so complicated and how the truth isn't always what it appears to be on the surface. I'd love to know, have you ever been in a situation where someone in your family wasn't who you thought they were? What did you learn about forgiveness and family loyalty from your own experiences? If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own family relationships, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family betrayal and redemption. Share this with someone who might need to hear about the power of choosing love over bitterness, and let me know in the comments what family lesson meant the most to you. Until next time, remember that true family strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from choosing healing when conflict inevitably comes our way.